Hello, my name is Jordan Dierkson, and this is the Dierkson Discussion. On today's episode, we're going to be addressing the problem that has been increasingly rampant since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and also alludes to why this assassination occurred even in the first place, which is the permission structures that are being created that enable and actually encourage violence/radicalism on not just one, but both sides of the aisle. Let me preface this by saying that words are not bad. They're not bad. In this country, you have the ability to speak your mind however you see fit. It's the very essence of who we are as Americans, having a freedom of speech and religion and gathering and freedom of the press, which is, that's how authoritarianism and dictatorships actually start, is when you start controlling what the masses indulge. Take a look at North Korea, for example. North Koreans, to the world, their regime sets up fake grocery stores so that on the outside it looks like, oh yes, our country is full and abundant of food, our people are wonderful. Whereas really, people are being put into labor camps, people are being killed. You wake up to an alarm every morning that is literally broadcast on every street, and your job, and if you don't do it, you get shot, is to go out and sweep the street to make sure that from the outside, North Korea looks good. And the people inside have no idea what's going on with the outside world. They think everybody else is evil, and that North Korea and Kim Jong-un is essentially the savior. The same can be said in the Middle East. In the Gaza Strip and such, they have an overwhelming support for Hamas and for radical Islam, which is actually kind of insane. That's a part of the reason why Hamas has been in power for so long, is they were elected for a 4-year term, and I think we're 16 or 18 years into a 4-year term for them. But increased polling in the Gaza Strip shows that they would just keep electing Hamas because they are okay with what they do. They are okay with their ideals and with what they think, which includes the mass murder and genocide of Jews. The reason why I bring this up is because that's what happens when you say that words are bad. When words create violence, when words are mean, and that some words need to be controlled. It's not true. You shouldn't be able to control words. You should not. If somebody wants to say the N-word, they should be able to. Now, whatever societal consequences happen because of that let them befall that person. However, in terms of law and criminal prosecution, there should be none. There should be nothing that the government goes into in that sector. And that's, I think, a part of the reason why us as Americans, we need to start thinking about things. We tend to think about things in the sense of, well, it's not illegal, so it must be okay. Legality is not a moral framework. It's not a very good one, because if all things that were considered to be moral were lawful and all things that were immoral are unlawful, a majority of the country would want to make premarital sex illegal. Now, do I agree with that? No. It's the same argument can be said for same-sex marriage, is that marriage in and of itself is a Christian institution. It is a Judeo-Christian belief and ideal. It is a religious ceremony. And yet the government coming in and mandating that religious ceremony needs to be okay for something that those religions explicitly say is not okay, is not approved or condoned, is insane. The government doesn't belong in that sector. They don't. They should not relegate it. They should not push it. But let me get back to my original point, because like I said, today's episode is how permission structures for violence and radicalism are being created, and why they allude to the assassination of Mr. Kirk. Is how you frame your words and how you can miscontextualize conversations or something that somebody said leads down a very slippery slope. It's not very hard for me. I could take a video editing software and grab a bunch of clips of Kamala Harris and make it seem like she's putting out a MAGA message. Would it be true? No. But there are some people that would see that and be like, oh my gosh, she is MAGA. I should have voted for her. She is Republican. When in reality, that's not it at all. Because I'm being deceitful with how I'm contextualizing those words. A great example of this is, let's say somebody said the N-word. Like, let's say you saw a clip, somebody pulled a clip of a speaker talking, and they said the N-word. Right? And then somebody goes out and beats the living hell out of that guy, or maybe even kills him, or burns his house down, or maybe he gets fired from his job, whatever it may be. And you're like, rightly deserved. That dude should not be saying the N-word out there to people, especially if he's a public speaker, whatever else. But then a couple weeks later, you see the full context of that person was talking about how it's not okay for people to say the N-word. Or if he was like, if I came up and walked up and called you the N-word right to your face, what would you do? For some people, they'd be like, whatever, live and let live. But for that person, their life has now been altered and or destroyed entirely because of the way somebody else miscontextualized or even misinterpreted their words and their meaning. And that's where this permission structure is coming from, and where it's rising up from. Because nobody that I have seen is explicitly out here calling for violence, calling for radicalism or destruction of anybody or anything. But they are kind of wink, wink, nodding at it because of the way that they're framing their words and miscontextualizing it. So let's tie this to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, because it's very important and it's a very clear example of that. A lot of people think that Charlie was a very hateful man. He was a hateful person. He was spreading hate. That's not the case at all. If you actually take a second to watch even some of his clips, some of his videos, you don't have to go full right wing, but you can very clearly see that he's not hateful. He talked to people who were gay, people who were trans, people who were black, people who had different opinions of different ages, different races. I mean, if he was a hateful person, I guarantee he would not even want to speak to any of those people, much less the manner in which he spoke to them was always polite and kind, and even at times, I think, too generous for the people who would yell at him, throw things at him, kick his signs, try and assault him. I mean, call him everything in the book. And yet he was still gentle and kind. But then you get to how the legacy media and how certain members of our political party, our leftward political party, talk about certain figures. I mean, I think it was 2 days before his assassination, somebody on CNN called Charlie Kirk like he's a demon, or saying he was a very bad person, he was a very bad man. We saw this entirely during the most recent election cycle in 24, where Trump was essentially painted as Hitler on the front of Time magazine. I think it was. Was it Times? It might have been another one. Don't quote me on that. I don't think it was Time magazine, actually, now that I think about it. But they call him Hitler, they call him Trump, they call him a Nazi, they call him a dictator. But it's not true, and they're miscontextualizing things, and they're misframing their words. Because let's just go down the rabbit hole, right? If you think that Trump is Hitler, okay, nobody's saying we got to kill Hitler, we got to put him down, or anything else like that. But if you call him Hitler and say he's a threat to our nation, to every single person here, doesn't that make you think that some people in their head are going to jump to the very easy conclusion that Hitler was the worst person in recent history? If this guy's the next Hitler, why is he still breathing? And then you get a dumbass 22-year-old kid climbing up onto a roof in Butler, Pennsylvania, trying to take a shot and almost blowing his head off on national television. That's how you get to that point. And the reason why I'm spelling out so clearly is because that some people they play dumb, they play ignorant, that, how do we get to this point? It's the MAGA right, or they're hateful. I mean, even 10 minutes after the attempted assassination of Trump, they were calling the kid a white supremacist. I mean, not 5 minutes after the reporting of Charlie Kirk being shot, CNN was talking about, well, maybe it was one of his supporters who shot their gun off in celebration. Who the hell shoots a gun off in a crowd of 2,000 people in celebration? Who? What rational person would actually believe that? But it's this type of context, it's this type of framing of how you say things that leads people down certain paths in their thinking. Because whether we like it or not, some people are very, very easily led. Some people, I don't know whether it's consciously or subconsciously, like to follow. They don't feel comfortable being in the lead. They don't feel comfortable being the center of attention. But they're perfectly fine being behind the curtain, pulling the ropes, shining the lights, and working it as dastardly as they can. And our legacy media, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, sometimes at times even Fox, I mean, the way that they misframe things almost instantaneously about major events in our country is absolutely ludicrous. Whether it's a natural disaster, a political assassination, crime rates, or wildfires, I mean, they instantly try and warp it and frame it. Now, should that be something that is legally challenged? No. That's a hard thing to say. Is that I do not think that the courts should be involved or get involved in something like this. Not at all. However, there is another aspect, and it is for us to introduce societal repercussions. What are those? Well, let's take a look back in the 1950s. If you, as a man, got your high school girlfriend pregnant and you weren't married, that was very frowned upon. So you'd have what's called a shotgun wedding. The reason why it's called a shotgun wedding is because, in essence, it felt like your girlfriend's dad was walking her down the aisle with a shotgun pointed at you because he doesn't want her to marry you, but you have to get married because you got her pregnant. There are societal repercussions to the things that you do that are not always in law. And that's why having the law as a moral authority is not a very good idea. If you're religious, that's why God is the ultimate and only moral authority. If you're not, I honest to heavens pray, that you find a moral authority that is rooted in Judeo-Christian values. Because if you go by a whim of whatever you want it to be, of whatever feels right, whatever feels good, you are going to be an insanely material person and will never find contentment and will always have things muddied and blurry in your life when it comes to morality. Another example of this, of this creating a structure for violence and radicalism is what happened today, September 17th, with Jimmy Kimmel's, I guess you'd call it firing. They essentially took his, let me look it up just so I don't actually miscontextualize this myself, but so ABC pulls Jimmy, this is from the New York Times, ABC pulls Jimmy Kimmel off air for Charlie Kirk comments after FCC pressure. So Jimmy Kimmel went on air Tuesday night, and he said, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it." It is crazy how mischaracterizing of the shooter's beliefs that is. It is insane how somebody who, whether it's 1,000 people listening to him or 1,000,000 people listening to him, frankly, I don't think his ratings are very good. I've never found Jimmy Kimmel funny at all. I've always thought he's a wannabe brash comedian, but his brashness just came off as a douchebag rather than funny and instantly dislikable. And it's the pushback is there. That's a societal repercussion because he miscontextualized everything. These broad statements that people on the left love to make about people on the right of the MAGA gang. Who specifically? Name who specifically is trying to mischaracterize the motives of the shooter. And what evidence do you have that he was on the right side of the aisle? The only thing that I've seen with this is that the kid's grandmother is saying, not my grandson. I don't think anybody in my family is a Democrat or isn't Republican. My grandson could never do something like this. It's the only person. His parents have refuted that. His siblings have refuted that. Even his trans furry lover has refuted that. The text messages have refuted that. The Discord messages have refuted that. The engravings on the damn bullets refuted that. And so by intentionally being ignorant and feigning ignorance, you're doing something terrible. Because it's like, in this, let's think this all the way through. Jimmy Kimmel says that. And somebody who doesn't know a whole lot about it, who isn't keeping up with it, who isn't doing their own research, and looking at it from multiple angles to figure out what the truth is, will see that and go, oh my gosh, the shooter was on the right? Gosh, the people on the right side of the aisle are terrible because he talks trash about Trump every single time he's on the air. He's like Stephen Colbert. That's their only line they have to go to is Trump's bad. Trump's bad. Oh man, take a look at what the MAGA right is doing. And it's like, that's not funny. You're a late night host. You're supposed to be funny. But B, they're clearly biased. But following this all the way to its end, somebody hears that. And they hear him talk bad about Trump. And they're like, oh, our president's terrible. Trump's terrible. He's a wannabe dictator. And then, oh, the person who shot Charlie Kirk was on the right. Wow, the people on the right side of the aisle are kind of violent. They're kind of mean. They're shooting people who are on quote unquote their side. And then it leads to people being increasingly more violent. It increases fear. It increases tension. Because now people on the left who, let's say, are moderate, who don't know a whole lot about this, are going to turn around, and the next thing you know, they're going to be scared of anybody on the right side of the aisle. They're like, oh, well, the shooter of Charlie Kirk was on the right side of the aisle, and Trump's terrible, so I've seen enough. I'm not even going to talk to those people. And it further shuts down the conversations that Charlie Kirk was fighting so hard to have, that are so needed. It further pushes that wedge into the gap between the left and the right side of the aisle until it gets too wide and too deep, and now neither side sees each other as human anymore. I fear that that's the point we're getting to. Because right now, the violence is only coming from one side of the aisle. And what it seems like to me is that with what Jimmy Kimmel has said, what some analysts on CNN have said, even what other legacy outlets have said about the shooter, about the messages, about the family, or just about Charlie's message, is that they don't care about meeting in the middle. They don't. Because you honest to God, you can't, as President J.D. Vance said, you cannot unify with people who will celebrate the death of a man like Charlie Kirk, whether you agree with him or not, because he leaves behind 2 very young children and a widow. You can't. You just can't unify with people like that. With, in my opinion, human garbage. And I pray for those people. It's hard for me to do so. But I pray for them because they've clearly lost a piece of their humanity. And I desperately hope they reclaim it. Or find some way to get it back. But how does this all lead into permission structures for violence and radicalism? Well, like I said, follow things to their easily logical conclusion with the way the media frames things. Oh, it's one of his supporters shooting a gun off in celebration and accidentally hit him. Oh, well, it's not our side of the aisle. If I was on the left, oh, it's not one of us. When in reality, it is one of you. It is somebody who held these democratic beliefs. Even the shooter said that he was a hateful person, and that kind of hate can't be negotiated with. What kind of hate? Because Charlie, like many rational thinking people and people who live in the real world believe is that a man cannot become a woman and a woman cannot become a man, is that we are inherently different, okay? Whether we like it or not. You can be a feminist man. You can be a tomboy. That's okay. But to say that, oh, all of a sudden I'm a man now or I'm a woman now is ludicrous. It's ludicrous to me. But how do we get to a solution? Some sense of solution, because every problem that I want to bring up here on the Dierkson discussion, I want to have some sense of proposed solution, some way to move forward, because that's one thing I think a lot of people in the media landscape don't do. They're very eager to point out the very obvious problems, and many politicians do this as well. They're very eager, but they're very lackluster and lazy in the solutions that they propose, if any. For example, like Andrew Tate. He correctly diagnoses some problems of that men nowadays are kind of weak. They're kind of pussies. Or that men nowadays are not fighters. They're not strong. They're not standing up for what they believe in. And his solution is scam a bunch of people, get rich, sleep with as many women as you can, and tell everybody else to F off. Whoa. That is not the solution to those problems at all. I agree with you that those are problems, but that is not the solution to them at all. But the solution to these permission structures that are being created, the first thing I'd say, and that I actively try to do, is push back against those who distort the truth, whether willingly or unknowingly. If somebody is saying something that is very easily or to be untrue, don't just be like, oh, well, I guess if that's what you want to believe, that's a cop-out. That's a coward's way out in any debate or conversation. Just ceding that point to them of like, I guess if that's what you want to believe, no, that's wrong. I'm sorry, that's wrong. There is one truth. There is a fundamental truth. There's not your truth versus my truth. No, there is one truth. And that truth always prevails, no matter what, whether it agrees with you or it agrees with your opponent at all. There's one truth. So the people who distort that truth, we need to push back against them. For example, if that CNN anchor who said that it was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, all somebody has to do to correct that is go, are you insane? It's a crowd of 2,000 people. What kind of normal person would willingly and knowingly shoot that gun off in celebration, especially when they're in mid-conversation and it wasn't like Charlie had just dropped a gotcha point or a bombshell on the person? Not at all. That makes no sense. It's not logical. It's not rational. That's all it would have taken for somebody to call that person out. Secondly, we need to seek truth in everyday life, and especially in these nationwide events, because even on the local level, like from where I live in a relatively small town. I mean, it's a city. It's about 200,000 people, but even local events can be distorted and biased. So you have to seek the truth, which means you have to do your own research, and that also includes stepping outside of your comfort zone. One thing I'm doing right now that I absolutely loathe is I have started reading books by people on the left, whether it's about DEI, whether it's about reparations, whether it's about trans, whether it's about gun laws. I mean, I'm reading these books to better understand their perspective, but also find the actual truth, because I know that on my side of the aisle, whether I believe we have the entire truth or not, or what we're saying is honest, I know that there's a chance that it might not be, and I don't want to be seen as a liar or somebody who is misguided. So you can't just follow people blindly. You can't. You have to do your own research, and every day you have to be willing to seek the truth. Another good solution to this, and this is alluding to kind of why Jimmy Kimmel got fired. Not only were the things he said absolutely atrocious, but the parent network was rightly worried because of the uproar of what he said, of losing viewership and losing their credibility in the quote unquote communities that they serve. So speak not only with your voice, but with your wallet, with your feet. Oh, like it baffles me that some people don't do this. They're entirely opposed to things like, let's say when Target had the tuck swimsuit scandal. Some people were entirely happy to call that out and say that's disgusting, that's wrong, that's gross. But then the very next day, their wife or they themselves are going shopping, guess where? At Target. You're still giving your money to these people, your hard-earned income, to allow them to turn around and bash your beliefs, whether it's if you're a Christian, whether if it's you're a family person, whether it's if you're a blue-collar, hard-working individual. You are using your wallet to fund the hatred they send your way. Stop doing it. It might be easier to order stuff off of Amazon than to go out to the store and buy it. But if Amazon is willingly saying boys can be girls and girls can be boys, and you really don't like that and are opposed to that, your tiny little voice out of 350 million people in this country is not going to matter that much. But all of a sudden, let's say you spend $200 a month on Amazon. $200 a month, right? I'm going to pull up a calculator and we're going to do this math. You spend $200 a month at Amazon. Multiply that by 12 for the year. You spend $2,400 a year on Amazon. That's just you and your household, right? It's pretty insignificant to their profit margins. But let's say for the sake of the argument, half the country is Republican. And half of the country, we can actually use the numbers from the last election. I think Trump won 76 million votes. So let's say everyone did that. Every single person who voted for Trump did that. We multiply that by 76 million. We get $912 million. That's almost $1 billion in revenue that Amazon would stand to lose if simply people started talking with their wallets rather than with just their voices. That's what's going to hit them hardest. What do you think made Bud Light correct itself? So much so that we have Post Malone and Jelly Roll and Morgan Wallen and Peyton Manning back in Bud Light commercials rather than Dylan freaking Mulvaney dressed up as Audrey Hepburn going, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that Bud Light sent me a can to celebrate my year of womanhood. It's like, no. We speak with our wallets, and we make these companies and these people and these networks regret ever doing things that they blatantly know is untrue. They spit in our faces, and instead of going, hey, don't spit in my face, we're like, okay, can you hand me a napkin? Can you hand me a paper towel or a tissue to wipe off the spit you just spit in my face? It makes no sense that we allow it. Now, this is a point that I really want to make. Before I continue my rambling, I need to take a drink. Now, the point that I have to make is violence is not the answer. So many people are condemning, we condemn political violence. But if you don't also condemn the permission structures and the ideologies that allow for this violence and at times even encourage it, you're not doing any help. Violence is not the answer. But I'm going to take a quote from Norse mythology or from Marvel. That's something that Odin said to Thor, is that a good king does not seek war, but is always ready for it. Now, it may be cheesy and nerdy to quote a comic book, but it's very important, and the truth of that still rings out. Because we don't need to be seeking violence. Meeting violence with violence is not the answer. Jesus said, if your enemy hits you in the or slaps you on the cheek, turn the other cheek. But he also didn't advocate for being a pacifist. He advocated for things of self-defense. So what does that mean? Is that don't meet violence with violence, but you have to be prepared for things to get hectic. You have to be prepared for that to come your way. Take a look at all of the people who go to college campuses or stand on street corners with signs against the radical trans agenda, and you have trans people that you can clearly tell because they've got miscolored hair, They're wearing hippie stuff. They're in the wrong type of clothes, it looks like, that don't fit them or are way too tight. And they come up and they start screaming at them, kicking them, punching them, throwing things at them. The other side is the side that's prone to violence. The left is the side that's prone to violence. If you're on the right, you should not be meeting violence with violence. That doesn't mean don't protect yourself, but it's not the answer. Don't fan the flame, especially now when things are so tenuous, where it's like a single pin drop on either side of the scale will cause that scale to shoot one way or the other. Don't be the pin drop. Don't. But be prepared. Be prepared for it. Because if worse comes to worse, that's all you're going to have. That's all you're going to have is your preparation. Is that if things get violent, you need to be prepared to defend yourself, but don't cause it. I once got into a fight in middle school with this kid. And my mom caught us. She was driving home from work. She caught us at the bus stop brawling in the middle of the street. And she told me to get my ass in the car, and I did. And the kid still wanted to fight me. And I'm like, no, dude, she's way scarier than you are. Trust me. I was like 11 or 12 at the time. And get home. She asked me where he lives. I know where he lives. We walk over to his house and knocks on the door. And my mom is bent down talking to this kid. And she's like, why are you fighting my son? All this, like, blah, blah, blah. It's a repeated problem with you, because him and I had been in a couple of fights. And he looks at my mom and he says, well, ma'am, my mom taught me never to back down from a fight. And my mom looks at him and goes, she never told your dumbass to go looking for one either. And that's a very, very important point. Don't go looking for the fight, but never back down from one. But I'll leave you with this here today that I think is very, very important, and that not a whole lot of people understand. And I think this is a moment for us as a conservative movement and as a people, that if you're conservative, especially if you're a young conservative like I am, there is a cost. There is. I don't even know the full cost of being conservative yet to me. But I have lost some friends. I have lost some family. You can be ousted from certain positions. I have been blocked in academics. I went to college for 2 years and dropped out 3 times. One of the times that I dropped out was because for my English final, that was worth 40% of my grade, our professor said you must write a 12-page essay on whatever modern-day topic that you'd so choose, but it has to be an argumentative essay, and it has to be very informative. You have to have at least 25 citations. And I was very, very adamant on wanting to do my essay on the dangers and effects of wokeism in our society. And I had to go back and forth with this educator multiple times. She first tried using the excuse that, I don't think you're going to find enough sources. I sent her 10 sources I found on the front page of Google that I read through that were exactly what I was looking for to be able to argue my point in my essay. Then she changed it from, there's not going to be enough sources to, it's really hard to define wokeism and what is being woke. And then I added more citations. I added comedians describing wokeism. I added people of color describing what being woke meant. I included the Webster's Dictionary definition of what being woke was, until eventually the educator just told me, pick a different topic. Because if you submit that paper, I'm not going to grade it. And I was like, you said we can do it on whatever topic we so choose, and this is what I'm very passionate about. And so when I re-enrolled in that university a semester later, I got a different English teacher. I specifically asked for the other one that they had. And the very first question I asked this man was, am I going to be barred from doing certain topics in this class and writing about certain things because of my political beliefs? And he said, no. He's like, I don't care about your political beliefs. If your writing is good, your writing is good. That's my job, is to educate you on English and how to write. And I was like, thank God, thank God. Sure enough, I did my final that year on gun control. The arguments for it, the arguments against it, and what does the evidence actually suggest. And it was a very, very much so conservative, argumentative paper. I got 100% on it because I met the criteria. Even if you didn't like the content, I still met the criteria. It's like building a house. You may not like the layout, but is it up to code? But like I said, there's a cost to being conservative. But these consequences are our burden to bear because we are in the pursuit of what is right. We are in the pursuit of the ideals of our nation. We are in the pursuit of what it means to exist as equals, man and woman. And if we are going to be challenged for that, whether it's some people don't want to serve us at their restaurants, whether it's some people don't want to talk to us, whether some of our family members don't want to be around us at our family holidays, whether our jobs don't want to give us certain promotions, whether your teacher doesn't let you write about certain things, fine. That's our cross to bear. But we're pursuing something that is entirely greater than ourselves and greater than those material things. And so it's wrong of us to give up that ideal for something so small and material. And I'll leave you with that. I hope all of you have a blessed day or night whenever you're listening to this. But I've been Jordan Dierkson, and this has been the Dierkson Discussion. Thank you.